So the dumbest bill in America is, are you ready for this? You can't believe it. Sex ed for kindergartners. Sex ed for kindergartners, yes. Governor Jay Inslee
of a familiar name.
Washington State. He was actually a presidential candidate until not too long ago. He has signed into law this legislation, which just passed. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And it provides, among other things, sex ed for kindergartners. He signed Senate Bill 5395, which mandates sex ed curriculum be available for instruction to students in grades 6 through 12, which is kind of what most people have seen over the past couple of decades. But then all grades, including kindergarten, beginning in the 2022 and 2023 school year, including kindergarten, guys.
God.
Just saying.
In kindergarten, man, I was just playing with my blocks and wanted to be left alone.
So here's the thing. We have several short clips on this where there was a debate on the House floor in the state of Washington over this bill. And here, first up, is Representative Jenny Graham. She's a Republican. And she's, I don't know, just talking common sense about this bill. And here it is.
The one good thing that's coming out of this is that the parents are paying attention, and they are going to be sending a very loud and clear message, as they have been this entire time. These are our children. They don't belong to the government. They don't belong to the schools. These are our children, and we decide what they will or will not learn.
Yeah, they're our children. They're not, the children don't belong to, they're not wards of the state. So when they're in kindergarten, you don't get to basically, you know, educate them or at least brainwash them about, I don't know, Me Too or other kinds of issues that don't belong in kindergarten. I don't know. Is it just me, guys? You're being awfully quiet. You're worrying me.
This harkens back to the People's Republic of China again. I understand Mao had an attraction to 11 and 12-year-olds.
Good.
And so the other thing I think about, it used to be, I think, child molesters stopped at middle school parking lots.
Yes.
You never see them in elementary school parking lots. Well, here's a reason for child molesters to be in elementary school parking lots.
Absolutely. Because you
man,
get to
if
teach.
I was a parent in Washington State and I had kids that weren't going to school or starting to go to school, I'd be looking for private schools or moving the heck out of the state.
Absolutely.
I think given my millennial libertarianism in me, I don't believe it is the government's role to educate children on social issues stemming from these kinds of programs. It should really be up to the parent to determine when is the best time for me to educate my children on these types of issues. And a lot of this has to do with, you know, different religious affiliations, you know, and this isn't solely. It's so
Well,
tough.
here's an idea. It's a kindergartner.
Of course, yeah.
What the heck? I mean, as you said, you were playing with blocks in kindergarten. You were coloring in coloring books, and then suddenly the teacher's going to go, "Hey,
well, then I got to worry about what a consensual relationship is." And no offense, in kindergarten, I didn't know what the word consensual even meant. Too big for me.
And I'm not really sure it's a good word to learn at that particular point in time. But that's a parent's job.
The more we talk about this, the more things that pop into my head about how this is just so unapplicable. Like, how could you, like a Christian family or a Muslim family or a Jewish family or a secular family, how can you give all four of them the same kind of indoctrination based on, you know, sexual ideology and preference based on
to a 5-year-old?
To a 5-year-old.
Yes.
It should be up to the parent to determine when is the appropriate age for them to learn this.
I would have to think that Oregon, Idaho, and Montana need to be ready with new schools.
Absolutely, including new private schools, which they probably already have. So here's Representative Monica Stonier. Of course, I want to say Stoner, but it's Stonier because she sounds like she's stoned. She actually is a supporter of the sex ed and kindergarten bill. And this is Monica Stoner talking about the bill to provide sex ed to kindergartners, 5-year-olds. Here it is.
That avoiding conversations about who we are, how our relationships work, and how our bodies work does far more harm than good. And I would say that the suicide rates in those teens are proof that that is the case.
Yeah, so she's saying, you know, we shouldn't avoid talking about these issues and so forth. But first of all, who's the we? Right? I thought the we were the parents and the children, but she, of course, is, and she's very clever. She's very hyper-focused on teenagers because, you know, this is part of the liberal and progressive ideology, which is to basically talk about the teenagers, but really that's not what the bill just does. The bill talks about people in kindergarten, which of course she avoids.
Indoctrination.
Indoctrination, 100%.
It's to teach these kids things that they're not being taught in their homes that should be appropriate for conversations between the parents and their kids. There is no role for the state and the school system to interject themselves in these conversations. And it's going to be, I think it's going to start to destroy the public school system.
Oh my gosh, I think the public school system in many states is already in great decline. And unfortunately, there's so many parents that are stuck in public schools who have to pay taxes and, of course, already for their houses and income taxes and so forth. And that funds public schools, depending on the state that you live in, on how they're funded. And then the parent at the end doesn't have school choice. So they're not given any kind of voucher or tax credit to be able to send their kid to private schools. So they're stuck in that really strange public school setting. So look, here is Representative Chris Gideon. Or it's Gidlon, excuse me. He's a Republican talking about the same bill. It's Chris Gidlon. He's a Republican from Washington State. He's on the House floor as they're debating the bill. He brings up a really good point, because we're talking about sex ed for kids as young as kindergarten all the way to 12th grade in public schools. It's mandated curriculum. And listen to what he talks about. Here's the clip.
That it's important, but it's not important enough to get periodic feedback from parents and community members across the state. I've learned that students are mature enough to learn about all aspects of sexual behavior, but they are not mature enough to learn about the realities of abortion.
Oh, so there you go. So apparently part of the sex ed curriculum will not be taught is abortion and the science of it, because we can't teach about the science of it because, that's just not what we do in public schools. We want to teach about the other stuff. I don't know. Just final thoughts on this, guys.
Indoctrination.
Absolute indoctrination.
Every case, but it is. And look, some people might be like, hey, if it's up to local school boards to develop the curriculum and how they teach it and things. With this bill, it is not the case. If you read the bill, they basically catty corner you into teaching specific topics to each grade. And when I first found this bill, I looked at it and I was like, oh, maybe it's teaching what you as a 5-year-old can expect to happen to you developmentally in the next 2 years. It is unrelated to that. It has so much more to do with a lot of these social topics that you hear about in the news or you hear about in college campuses and things, and trying to impart this on 5-year-olds.
The bill is completely prescriptive because I read it as well. It's funny because the progressives said, oh no, each locality can kind of implement it the way they want to. It's not the way the bill's written at all. No. Because that's why the bill specifically says starting in kindergarten. Final thoughts on this, Warren?
It's just shocking how far we've come.
It's really
between the unions and these liberal groups imposing their will upon the curriculum, and the things kids have to learn from that in a lot of cases aren't even true. The curriculum is just plain wrong. There was a history thing my kids had to go through, and the founder of the American Communist Party was quoted as a well-known American historian. Mm-hmm. And he was imparting his communist view on America, which he hates. And when you see things like that in curriculum, when you see our tax dollars are being spent not to educate, not to teach fact, but to politicize and propagate propaganda, it's sickening. And it's not what this country was founded on. It should not be acceptable to anybody. And it should not be acceptable to Democrats. This is not, I'm not saying this is partisan. People that truly believe in America, the greatness of America and want us to be a great country, we're losing on this education front because our kids are not being taught things that are relevant to our country.
Big time.
I learned growing up that that the Liberal Party stood for freedom of idea, freedom of exploration,
critical thinking,
freedom of critical thinking. The whole Berkeley movement.
Not anymore.
Exactly, and this is what that bill does. This
Absolutely,
is a denigration of that philosophy.
Starting at age 5. Well, that's it. That's the last word, actually. That's it for Mark the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our millennial, Garrett Ross and Warren Miller. Thank you very much for being here. And, of course, our producer, Adam Coutura, and our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.